Hey everybody, what's up? I'm Steven, and today I'm going to be talking about my list of NXT Superstars that need to win the NXT Championship in 2021. First up on my list is Killian Dane. I think that, he's been around in NXT for a while. He even left, like when he was part of Sanity, they went up to the main roster, then he came back to NXT, and he's just been kind of put into a random tag team with Drake Maverick. Um, as much as I'd like to see them win the tag team titles, they're clearly more of just like a comedy act, so I'd rather see him actually win the NXT title. He's a big dude. I could see him competing with the likes of like Tommaso Ciampa and people like that have been the champion before, that have sort of paved the way. I think he could be the next big star in NXT. I know he's been there longer than most of the people on the roster and some of these new guys that are there, but I think him as champion would really cement someone else that could beat him eventually too, because he is, like I said, he's one of the biggest guys on the roster, biggest, meanest, toughest guys on the roster. I think he'd be hard to beat. I guess I would compare him to sort of like a Brock Lesnar of NXT type of thing, and I'd like to see him run roughshod over the NXT locker room for a while, not as Drake Maverick's like tag team partner or sort of like the great protector thing that they're doing, but more of like a dominant either heel or babyface, however they would do it, that just runs through the entire NXT roster until somebody can finally beat him for it. I think that would really build up Killian Dane, and then maybe they could send him back to the main roster as a legitimate threat to one of the world titles, like the world title or the universal title, whatever. But if that were to happen, I hope it happens soon, probably this year, because there's a lot that goes on throughout the year, especially for NXT. We could see that transition from him as a tag team partner to a legitimate threat, a legitimate heel in the company. Next up, another guy who's one of the biggest, toughest guys on the roster is Bronson Reed. Ever since I saw him win a triple threat match against Johnny Gargano and Roderick Strong to qualify for that NXT, the North American title ladder match they did a while back last year. I've kind of been a fan of Bronson Reed's. He didn't do much toward the end of 2020, but I think 2021 could really be his year. Because it'd be someone fresh and new winning the title rather than seeing like Johnny Gargano or Ciampa winning the title again. And honestly, Bronson Reed, he's good in the ring from what I've seen. So I'd like to see more of that, more of him competing with Roderick Strong, Johnny Gargano, things like that. Like more of him competing in the main event, because it seems like he is a future main eventer. And I hope to see him actually in the main event of NXT in the near future, hopefully this year, maybe next year. He'd definitely be one of the top picks. I'm sure a lot of you maybe are thinking that too. It's just a shame we didn't get to see him do a lot by the end of the year. Like after that, it was he just kind of faded away for a while in NXT, I think. He didn't really do, he had maybe like a little bit of a rivalry with somebody, I forget who it was. And then kind of just, he didn't really do much near the end of the year. So this could be the year where Bronson Reed picks it back up and becomes NXT champion. Next up on my list is Timothy Thatcher. I'm not really a big fan of Timothy Thatcher, but I think he has that sort of like grit and that sort of heelish mentality that would make a good champion. He's one of the tough guys too. Like he took it to Tommaso Ciampa. They fought at the last NXT Takeover at War Games, I think it was, and I didn't realize how good he actually is in the ring until I saw him in that match with Tommaso Ciampa. I could see him as like a main event heel persona that someone has to take the title off of, maybe even Ciampa. I personally would like to see them two compete again, but maybe this time over the NXT title. I think he does have a future. I don't know if it's going to happen this year, but if it were to happen, maybe it should be like sooner rather than later, because these are the guys that are like him and Bronson Reed, Killian Dane, I feel like are the ones who are like the future of NXT. Like once Ciampa moves to the main roster or Gargano moves to the main roster, like even Adam Cole and them, when they're gone, we're going to need people to step up. And I think Timothy Thatcher is one of those guys. I think he would make a really great champion, even if it's just a one-time thing. Like, he does have that toughness and the tough guy mentality. He thinks he's better than everybody else and things like that. And he has his own sort of, like, wrestling style that he does that's unique to him, that makes him tough. It's more of, like, a ground-based wrestling rather than, like, throwing people around and things like this. More like mat-based and submission type thing. So we kind of saw him when he clashed with Ciampa. It was like a clash of styles almost. I think that would be really good for him in a run as NXT champion. It would really build him up as a legitimate star in NXT going forward. Next up is actually, I know we've seen like way too much of the Undisputed Era in NXT, but I'd like to see Roderick Strong actually win the title, because we recently saw Kyle O'Reilly fought for the title and lost, and Adam Cole was a former champion. I don't know necessarily if Bobby Fish seems more like a tag team wrestler, as I'm sure people would have thought Kyle O'Reilly was at the time before he decided to, or before he competed for the NXT title and sort of had that singles run. I'm kind of tired of seeing Adam Cole as the champion, so I think Roderick Strong seems like the type of guy who would be a really good champion as well and still represent the Undisputed Era, maybe even break off the Undisputed Era after that, and sort of move him to the main roster off of this. I think it'd even be an interesting feud between Adam Cole and Roderick Strong over who's the better NXT champion or something along those lines. I just think it would be different and unexpected almost too. I don't know who he would beat for the title, but I hope it happens at least this year if they are going to put the title on Roderick Strong, because he doesn't seem like a tag team. But like Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish, just to me, they're the tag team of the Undisputed Era, while Adam Cole and Roderick Strong are the singles competitors. But what I've seen from Kyle O'Reilly, I've kind of changed my mind on that, but I think having Roderick Strong as the champion, he could be like almost the new leader of Undisputed Era, or like I said, break off of Undisputed Era, because he's never held that title. He's been North American champion, but I mean that lasted a good while. But I'd kind of like to see him win the biggest title that NXT has to offer now. Next up is a bit of a stretch. I'm not exactly sure how things are going in NXT UK right now with like the COVID and everything, but I think it was last year or 2 years ago when Walter competed against Pete Dunne for the UK Championship. That was like one of the best matches I've seen in a long time. So I kind of want to see Walter actually come to NXT and win the world title here rather than staying in NXT UK. I'd rather see him like win the main NXT Championship. He seems like he's really good in the ring, and he'd definitely be like a sort of like beast in the ring that everybody can't beat. He's been champion, UK champion for a long time. Maybe he could do that with the NXT title as well. Similar to what I said with like Killian Dane and Bronson Reed, just like running through the whole roster till somebody finally is able to beat him. I know he's mainly in NXT UK, but I think it would be interesting and surprising if he actually showed up in NXT and took the NXT championship. Maybe off of Finn Balor, whoever's the champion when he does, but I think that would build someone. That's, again, building up somebody new for the future of NXT. Next up is one of my personal favorite superstars in Dexter Loomis. I think he's got that very creepy vibe about him. He's like always lurking in the shadows, kind of like what Sting used to do, or Darby Allin does in AEW. Like Dexter Loomis is just there. You feel his presence. He's almost like the Fiend in a way. And I think that would be quite a uniqueness to the NXT title picture as well, because everyone's like afraid of him. Like nobody wants to go up to him. So if they had to fight him for the title, it might terrify. Especially we've seen him in his feud with Cameron Grimes, who's like really scared of Dexter Loomis. It'd be kind of fun to see who else is actually afraid of him when they go up against him, and that maybe they don't want to fight him for the title, but they want a number one contenders match or something, and now they have to. That would kind of throw a wrench in things, I think, and make it different from what we've seen, because people are like terrified of him, and now they don't want to fight for the title, but he has it and they want the title. So it's like, I don't know. I just see Dexter Loomis as a future star. I wouldn't have said that like early last year when he was just kind of. I'm pretty sure he competed on Raw as like one of those like enhancement talents at one point, and now he developed in NXT. So I could see him, hopefully soon, winning the NXT Championship at some point down the road. One of the last three people I'm going to talk about on this list is actually Pete Dunne. I mentioned him earlier when I was talking about his feud with Walter and things over the NXT UK title. Pete Dunne recently came back to NXT, but he's on like a team with Pat McAfee and the Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch as like a heel faction. And it was kind of hinted that he might fight Finn Balor at some point. Like he was in a number one contenders match with Kyle O'Reilly recently. I think this year, if any year, would be the year to put the title on Pete Dunne. He is really good in the ring. He was the longest reigning NXT UK champion of all time. He was actually the first one, held it for like 2 years or something. I could see him going up, having all kinds of incredible matches. We've already seen him do that before with, like I said, with Walter. He had a match with Adam Cole at 2019 Survivor Series for the NXT title. Like all kinds of different feuds I could see him with just in NXT alone. There's a lot of potential for some really good main events if you had Pete Dunne as the champion. I think it's well deserved, and I think he's been there long enough. I think it's time they put the belt on him. I personally would want to see him fight probably Adam Cole again, maybe Kyle O'Reilly. Pete Dunne versus Finn Balor might be a fun match. There's all kinds of different ways they could go about this, but I just want to see Pete Dunne finally capture the NXT Championship for the first time. Up next is I'm going to talk about the former NXT North American champion, Damien Priest. I think he deserves a lot more than actually like competing for the North American title. He's really good in the ring too. I could see him as a future, like honestly, a future WWE champion as well. But since he's in NXT right now, I think it'd be best to put the belt on him, especially he's had a lot of TV time recently, his feud with Johnny Gargano and everything else. I think they're starting to build him into a main event star. I think, just like with Pete Dunne, I think there's a lot of potential for some really great matches there as well. Even some of the other people he's already fought could fight him again, like Johnny Gargano, or he fought Finn Balor one time. Just all different sorts of main event matches that I'm looking forward to, just if Damien Priest were to win the title. There's a lot of dream matches there as well. And he's one of those bigger guys in the company, in NXT, that's like a legit threat already to any champion he faces. But it'd be cool to see him as the champion and have just conquering his way through the whole NXT roster as well. And finally, I'm going to talk about, honestly, I want to see Kyle O'Reilly win the title. I'm recording this before his match with Finn Balor at NXT New Year's Evil, so I don't know if he actually wins the title. But if he does, that's good. If not, I hope he does win it this year, because they seem to be building Kyle O'Reilly up really well as a single star. They may be planning on splitting him from Undisputed Era at some point. I don't know how things are going to go. It just seems like everyone in the Undisputed Era, like I mentioned with Roderick Strong, they're starting to become like single stars now. And Kyle O'Reilly versus Finn Balor the first time was really good. I'm sure the second one will be good. I haven't watched it yet, but he's definitely a main eventer to the caliber of Adam Cole and Roderick Strong and some of these other guys that I mentioned, and some of the former champions like Johnny Gargano. Kyle O'Reilly, I mean, he's been here with Undisputed Era this whole time, so to see him go off on his own, I think he'd make a really great champion and would really maybe bring people to NXT that don't necessarily watch it, because they'd hear about this. I mean, he's a high flyer too, so he's had a lot of incredible matches we've seen just in the tag team division. And to see him finally capture the NXT title, I think would be really good for NXT as a whole. And then there's a lot of potential matches there as well for main events. He could fight Finn Balor again. The dream matches, like with Pete, he could fight Pete Dunne again. The fact that there's so many people that each of these guys could fight is why NXT's roster is a lot better than WWE's. because anybody could put up a good main event. But I think Kyle O'Reilly is probably the best on this list, and I think he should represent NXT throughout the year of 2021, maybe as a 1 or 2-time champion. Going forward, before they sort of break him out of Undisputed Era and make him go off on his own, or take him up to the main roster with Undisputed Era. Like, obviously, I don't know the plans for NXT, but I think that would be a really good thing for everybody, is to see Kyle O'Reilly win the NXT Championship. So there you go, guys. That was my list. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments section, and be sure to like this video and subscribe for more. I'm planning on talking about AEW Superstars, who I think should win the world title this year as well, so keep an eye out for that. And we got some Royal Rumble stuff coming up as well. Every Thursday is wrestling content, so if you like that, continue to watch every Thursday on our channel and subscribe. Take care, everybody, and stay safe out there.
Subscribe.